The September 13th, 2022 regular meeting of the Mill Creek City Council to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would Councilmember Paddock please lead us?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Holtzclaw,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vanel,
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari, Councilmember Steckler,
Here.
Councilmember Allison. Here. Councilmember Duque.
Here.
Councilmember Paddock.
Here.
Councilmember Cavallari notified me earlier this afternoon he has some personal matters to attend to and cannot be here tonight. Can we have a motion to excuse?
Motion to excuse Councilmember Cavallari.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that brings us to audience communication. I'll start in the chambers. Would anyone like to address the council tonight? Going once, twice, three times? Okay, online. Is there anyone online that would like to address the council? I can't see the full screen. Naomi, are you seeing anyone that I'm not?
There is nobody.
Okay. We'll have another opportunity as always at the end of the meeting. That brings us to our presentations. And the first item is now that he's had an opportunity to know he's on the council and have his family here, we're going to do a quick little photo op with council and Councilmember Paddock. So if we all want to move forward, and Scott, are you going to do the honors? Yep. Should we bring a laptop and have Stephanie on it? Or on everyone.
Oh, it's the photo opportunity?
Yes.
Okay.
No,
I didn't. I never missed one. Didn't want to swear in first.
We've already done that.
The whole family.
Yeah.
See the family. Yeah. All right. 3, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Steckler now for the second presentation of the awards that I will probably never win, the Great Garden Awards. It's up to you.
Yeah, where's that? Okay. If I could just get the presentation up on this. Looking directly at you, Mayor Pro Tem. You look lovely tonight. There we go. There.
We can barely hear.
Yeah, there's
How's
no,
that?
you gotta have
that
to
much better?
press the buttons, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
There's the priest. Thank you all. This is a great honor. Ever since I've been on council, I have had the privilege of being the council representative for the Arts and Beautification Board, and this board has brought back the Great Garden Awards to our city. So each year, we, as the council representative, I get to present the awards and talk a little bit about the award presentation itself. So this was a award presentation that was brought back, and how this works with the Arts and Beautification Board. they take the map of Mill Creek and they break it into 7 geographic zones. This is a very equal distribution of how these awards are presented. Each A and B board member is given 1 or maybe more zones to tour, and each member presents 2 to 3 of their favorite gardens to the entire board, and then 10 gardens are selected from each zone plus 3 at large. Thank you. Great gardens exhibit a number of different things: impressive designs, creativity, diversity, and beauty. What's important is each garden is a little bit different to that particular community. Not 2 gardens are exactly the same, and that is why they fit the particular community that represents Mill Creek. Each one of these homeowners dedicate time and caring for that garden. That's what's important. These homeowners are doing something to help make Mill Creek a little bit more beautiful place. So let's talk a little bit about the recipients. I think what we'll do is that we have a few of them here in the room, and afterwards we'll take a photo opportunity with them, but I want to go through all of them very quickly for you and show you their actual gardens. Okay, first one. This is in Red Cedar. This is Janice Balla's garden. As you can see, there's a beautiful amount of color and diversity in her garden, unlike my garden, which has a very basic color called green in it, occasionally supplemented by brown. Next up, in the Brighton neighborhood, Ellen and Michael Castro. This is their garden, which shows obviously a lot of care. I once had a couple of beautiful trees like that bordering my front door until I realized I could never trim them like that again. And so they just turned into 2 big, tall, straight trees. Next up, in Heatherwood West, a beautiful array of trees, shrubs, rocks, and other displays which showcase combining both the foliage along with some stonework, which is really something you see a lot in Mill Creek. I don't know much about gardening. I just have done a number of these presentations. In the Laurel neighborhood, again, this is one time when you see a lot of flowers being used in a garden, a lot of hard work. I have found that 5 shrubs can cover the same amount of area as 500 flowers, but flowers take a lot more work, but obviously present a lot more beauty and color to a yard. And next up, the Aspen neighborhood. This is, pardon me, I neglected the name on the last one. I apologize. Can we go back, please? So I can get that for the record. This is Julie and Jeff Jacobson's home in the Laurel neighborhood. And then moving on to the Aspen neighborhood of Robert Lan. You can see his beautiful yard, obviously carries on the side of the yard as well as in the front of the yard. A beautiful array of shrubs, and the person who picked this yard was just so impressed with the amount of trimming and loving care that went into that particular yard. Next up, in the Holly neighborhood, Jessica and Chad Lund. This is their particular home. And you can see that they actually have a very lengthy driveway that takes into account the stone rockery and hedge that they created out of stone, as well as all of the particular shrubs, trees, and flowers that they added, as well as some great color around their actual garage doors. And next up, in River Crossing, this is Dorothy Nearson's home. Beautiful amount of color. And what's really neat is the different displays of colors that she added. The person who brought this forward, so they were so impressed with the particular colors that she used in her yard and how they popped in various different purples and reds and greens and whites and other colors, and actually added a few other pieces of stonework as well. And next up, in the Douglas Fir neighborhood, this is a beautiful, beautiful yard. Laura and Grant Reed, who absolutely wanted to give credit to Howard Babcock Design, who actually designed this. And I found out later that Howard Babcock Design has been designing for like 52 years in our community, has done a number of different designs. It's very impressive. This is just one of many designs that he's done, but a great testament to all of our homes throughout Mill Creek that really want to take some time to create a statement for their yards. Next up. This is also interesting. We had a couple of homes that preferred to remain anonymous. So their names have been withheld at their request, but they wanted to make sure that their homes were mentioned. They were winners. In the Fairway division, this particular one had a lot of different shrubs and designs, a lot of different trimming and aspects that went into their home. Really a beautiful statement in the Fairway division. And then next up, we had another home in the Parks Division that preferred to remain anonymous, that also had some beautiful color in their home as well that they wanted to be mentioned. All of these are great winners, and we appreciate them all. I believe that's the last one, if you move ahead. Yes, so all of our recipients received these wonderful big bragging right signs that they could put in their newly proclaimed lawns, that all the neighbors would know that they were the winners of the Great Garden Awards. I also want to make note that the Art and Beautification Board went out early this year in June to make sure and take advantage of the yards at a little bit different time, a little bit earlier, to make sure that some of the blooms could be taken advantage of. Tonight, we have some of these winners who are here tonight that are exchanging their signs for a more permanent display. And if they would like to come forward, we want to make sure and get a photo opportunity with them and with the council. If they would come forward with these winners of the Great Garden Awards, we get a picture with all of them. First, let's get them their plaque, if they would come forward for me. Who are the winners? Well, you look like you're the proudest one. I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Dorothy Narrison. Okay. Here is your permanent award for your bookcase of honor at home, okay? And sir? Chad Long. There you go. Chad, this is your award. Dorothy, stay up here. We're gonna get a big photo. We don't want to miss you. We don't miss you up here. And
Howard Babcock.
Howard Babcock. Yes, thank you. Well, here is your award, sir.
Thanks, sir.
So if the three of you would step forward, right here in the middle. Yeah, there you go. And if you gentlemen will move in, I'll take my place of honor at the end. Get a photo with the council. You will. All right, 1, 3. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations to all our award winners. Thank you.
Okay, Martin, are you going to introduce our next presentation?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'll tee it off for Candace. Just wanted to say that every year about 281 cities across the state of Washington have the opportunity to reach out to their legislators to communicate not only their priorities, their capital priorities, but their funding needs as well. The objective is to create a council adopted legislative agenda that will be communicated with the public as well as with key constituents across their networks. We have Candace Bach here, the Director of Government Relations at AWC. Happy to have her here. She will give us an overview of the 2023 process on how we address and create those legislative agendas. She'll cover the legislative sessions, the importance of a strong city and advocacy, and how important that is to be working with those legislators year round. And also, she'll also cover the tools, and she'll get somewhat deep into the process on how to be an effective advocate and to advise us on how well we can work with our legislators in Olympia. With that, I'll hand it over to Candace Bach. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me this evening and giving me a chance to talk about AWC's legislative process and the legislative process overall, and how all of you can be involved, and how you might want to approach your own legislative agenda setting for the 2023 session. Also, congratulations to those beautiful gardens. It was inspired me as I've been thinking about what I might be doing with some of my garden projects next year. So thanks for that. Feels like a timeline cleanse almost. So I have a brief presentation, and I think I'm able to share my screen. So I will do that. And hopefully you are seeing that now.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so I want to start, and I'll try and run through this really quickly. If you've got questions, however you'd like to handle that. If you want to interrupt me, that's great. If you want to wait until the end, I will follow your lead. But I want to just start with a little bit of what to expect in the coming 2023 legislative session. Even though it's only September, we are very much focused on next year's session. It is a 105-day session, begins in January, the second Monday in January, runs through basically the end of April. we anticipate a number of new legislators this taking office in January. About 24 incumbent legislators indicated they weren't running for re-election this year or were running for a different position. So just with that, with those large numbers of folks, we know that there'll be a lot of new faces. And of course, the election season is upon us. We went through the primaries, and now we will see what happens come November. There was an expectation of perhaps a change in the majority makeup of our legislature. Of course, right now, both the House and Senate are controlled by the Democrats. We expect, there was some expectation of maybe that shifting. The primaries didn't indicate that would necessarily be the case. But again, we'll be watching that closely, and regardless, we'll have new faces and new legislators to introduce to issues that are important to cities. In a long legislative session, this is the first year of their biennium. They will be focused on adopting their biennial budgets for 2023 through 2025. That's the operating budget, the capital budget, and the transportation budget. So in addition to policy discussions and debates, they will be really focused on developing those budgets for state operations. As I mentioned, and as Martin introduced, AWC does a legislative agenda setting process, and we are in the final stages of that process. It kicked off back in the late spring, where we asked and invited city officials from around the state to provide us input on what they thought we should consider for the 2023 legislative agenda. There is AWC has a legislative priorities committee made up of about 29 members, primarily elected officials and some city managers from around the state. They've been meeting over the summer, and they last week had their final meeting and adopted a set of recommendations to forward to the AWC Board of Directors for their consideration, and the AWC board will consider these recommendations at their meeting at the end of the month. So we expect to have a fully adopted legislative agenda for 2023 by the end of this month. So you're getting a little bit of a sneak preview in terms of what the recommendations are. It's not certainly not a secret. We shared this out with our newsletter earlier this week. So you're seeing it as it goes to the AWC board. The committee recommended 5 priorities. The first one is the Blake decision response. And for those of you who are not maybe familiar with that terminology, Blake is a case decided by the state Supreme Court back in February 2021 that found unconstitutional a 50-year-old state law on drug possession. Under that law, drug possession had been a felony. Again, the court found that unconstitutional, and the legislature had to respond quickly back in 2021 with a new approach, and that approach was intended to be a bit of a stopgap measure while they took more time to consider how they wanted to address possession of controlled substances going forward. For cities, that stopgap measure and the ongoing decision will have fiscal implications, and we've been asking the legislature to support funding to help cities respond to those fiscal implications with law enforcement support, support in our municipal courts, prosecution, public defense, all of that, as well as treatment support so that people can get access to the kind of treatment they need to address their substance use disorder. Public safety vehicle pursuits is the next item on this list. Again, I think most folks are familiar with the work the legislature did over the last couple of years around reforms targeted at law enforcement practices. And one of those changes involved limitations on police vehicle pursuits. And there's been a lot of concern that perhaps those restrictions are too restrictive. And so AWC under this priority would be requesting that the legislature revisit that and revise those restrictions to address some reasonable suspicion situations where there's an immediate threat to public safety, and police can safely and effectively conduct that pursuit. The remaining 3 items that the committee recommended to our board, infrastructure funding. I think this one doesn't need a lot of explanation for those of you who've been involved with our legislative work over the years. You know that one of the most important things out there for cities at the state level is the Public Works Assistance Account, and the low interest loan program that it funds that helps offset the cost of really critical infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, water, sewer infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure. So this account, as many of you know, has been swept and diverted over the last decade or so, much to our frustration. And this is, again, another push to ensure that the legislature fully funds that account. And so cities across the state have access to this low interest source of funding to help keep up with your basic infrastructure needs. Housing affordability, availability, and accessibility. This, communities across our state are struggling with access to housing, affordable housing. And so this is a focus of AWC over the last couple of sessions, and our desire to have a proactive approach going into the 2023 legislative session to ask the legislature to give us tools and incentives that will help cities do what they can to increase housing supply and address affordability. So this is something that still, there's a lot of work going on right now. AWC is hosting a number of meetings with cities and outside stakeholders to further define what some of those solutions may be. But we know that cities have an interest in streamlining some of the regulation around this, more funding, again, for infrastructure that supports housing, incentivizing development of affordable housing. So there's a kind of a whole host of things that falls into this category. And then finally, behavioral health. We hear from cities around the state concerns about the lack of services readily available in their communities, the lack of providers, and how that really has, unfortunately, a significant impact on our communities, on public safety, on people's quality of life, and it's very much tied into the crisis around individuals who are unhoused, as well as some of the other challenges that we're facing in our community. So there's a real desire to support further state investment in behavioral health. So that is what is shaping up to be AWC's legislative agenda for 2023, our main priorities. In addition to these 5 main priorities that are recommended, there's kind of a whole host of other issues on our agenda that are at different lower levels of priority. And some of those things are like revising the property tax cap to tie it more closely to inflation, reviewing and updating the Public Records Act to address, what our current records challenges are, funding for culverts, replacement of fish blocking culverts. So a myriad of other issues are on our list. And it's really reflective of the fact that cities around our state, you are responsible for so many different things and aspects in your community. So our legislative agenda is very, very varied in reflecting all of the work that cities do around the state. So again, this is kind of the very top of that, the tip of that iceberg. And then there's a lot of other issues on the list that will, again, go to our board later this month. And that myriad of issues is really reflected in the variety of things that cities around our state put on their own legislative agendas. And I know part of this conversation is as you are looking towards 2023 and the city of Mill Creek wanting to develop your own legislative agenda. So I'll talk to that, but there's no one way to do that. There's no one exact right way to do that. The goal is to have those things that are most important to your community on your legislative agenda, and that are also reflective of those things that are, that need legislative action. There are often things that are important to cities, but there's not necessarily a legislative solution. It's something maybe different than that. So that's kind of where if you're, drawing the Venn diagram of things overlapping, you're looking for things that are important that also have a potential legislative solution as part of your agenda. We talk at AWC a lot about being a strong city advocate, and there are lots of ways to be a strong city advocate, and the importance of voices from cities around the state, and not just one person on your city council, but really everybody being involved in adding their voice to the legislative process. This slide, and I think you have these in your packet, but it's a link as well to a page on our website that gives a number of tools and help to encourage and assist you in being strong advocates. A couple of things I'll just touch on. Building relationships. That's really the crux of anything that we're doing, and building relationships with your local legislators is really key. They've got to understand what it is that your community is all about, what it is that's important to your community, the challenges you face in your city, the opportunities that you have, and how they can help in their legislative role. So again, that kind of goes to that item here about informing them about your city needs. Don't assume your local legislators know. That's your job to make sure that that they have that information and that you've built that rapport and that relationship. And that you're constantly communicating with them. The one I think misperception that's often out there when folks aren't really involved in the legislative process is assuming that it begins in January when session convenes. The most valuable time to spend with your legislators is when they're home in your district and not in Olympia, where they've got a million things going on and they're doing meetings in 15-minute increments and they're being pulled in a bunch of different directions. Talk to them now during the interim when they are home, when they've got more time, when they can really focus on your message and what's going on. This is also a really great time to engage with your legislators and communicate about your budget. Most cities are going into their budget development process. And so this is a great time to talk about that and expose them to your fiscal realities, invite them to your budget workshops, invite them to a council meeting to talk about the upcoming legislative session and what their thoughts are. So of course, many of them are distracted a little bit right now because it's campaign season for them, of course, but an important part of this time is that communication at the local level. And then, of course, developing a legislative agenda. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I do want to note, though, that I've got this image here about AWC resources. On our website, we've got lots of information for you, tools, background pieces, our newsletter. We try and share out what's going on. So always feel free to check out our website and just call and ask us if you need help. I'll get to that too. Again, developing a legislative agenda, as I said, there's no, oops, I clicked on the wrong page. There's no exact right way to do this. It's gotta fit you and your community. And again, there's a link here to a page on our website that has these bullets, but also has examples from other cities for the last couple of years, some collected legislative agendas out there. And you will see some of them are really pretty, with formatting and pictures and graphics, and some are just a bulleted list of things. So again, there's no perfect way, and they can be just as effective regardless of what that formatting looks like. The real focus should be on what does your community need, and clearly communicating that. Keeping it short and simple is usually best. Again, anytime you're trying to share information out, short attention spans and all that, keeping it simple is is helpful. We encourage cities to have their city council adopt their legislative agenda. It adds credibility. It allows you to move quickly during the legislative session. From time to time, we ask a city to weigh in on something and they're like, well, we can't weigh in on that right now because we have to go back and get it approved by our city council. During the legislative session, things move too fast for that. You don't have a week to wait to get it on your city council agenda, let alone 2 weeks if you don't have a meeting coming up. So having your positions adopted to the extent you can ahead of time allows you to move quickly and be really responsive during the legislative session. Legislative agendas can and should include your capital requests along with any policy priorities that you have. So if there is a project where you are thinking you will want to ask the legislature for funding, that should be very clear on your legislative agenda. And you should really talk about, why you need state funding and how you are funding the project overall and how the state funding that you're requesting fits into that picture. We, of course, always encourage cities to include AWC's legislative priorities as part of your agenda. And in some cases, cities actually just list them, or maybe they pick some that are most important to them and include them. Some will sort of adopt them by reference, almost like these are our priorities and we support everything that AWC does too. So, there's, again, no one way to do that, but we encourage you to look at our list and incorporate as much as you feel comfortable doing into your own agenda. Once you have it, don't keep it a secret, make it really public. First and foremost, share it with your local legislators. They're the ones who really need to know. But also, share it with your community broadly. Share it with your partners, your local business community, your chamber, other community groups that you work with. Share it with your neighboring cities, with your county, so that they know. And hopefully, you found areas where you are working together with some of those partners, and you can have joint legislative goals that you can communicate and demonstrate a partnership and lots of support for what you're asking for. And of course, to the extent you've got local media coverage, that's always a helpful place to share as well. This kind of broadly sharing your agenda is making sure everybody is aware and can help pull in the same direction. It also creates a sense of accountability for your legislators that, that it's widely known what your priorities are. I'll be really quick with this slide, but it's just to demonstrate, we use this all the time, that again, it's not just about the little slice of this pie that's yellow, that's the legislative session. There's really work to do all year round, and now is really a critical time. The fall is really the focus of preparing for a session. Again, building that communication and that relationship with your legislators, letting them know what your priorities are come January, so that once you hit January, you're just ready to go, and you've done all that preparatory work. I wasn't really sure for many folks how familiar you are with the legislature itself and the process. And I want to start by saying, if you're not familiar with it and you're not comfortable, don't worry. It's okay. You don't need to know the ins and outs of the inside baseball of the legislature. You really need to focus on building a relationship and communicating with your local legislator, and they'll take it from there. But if you want to know more about that and how it works, the legislative website is actually really great. And it's a place where you can find contact information, you can get bill information, when committees are meeting, how to get involved and testify in committee meetings. So it is a great resource, and I think it's won some awards. It's pretty user friendly, so I encourage folks to check that out. Our legislature, again, we've got 49 Senate members, half of which are running for election right now, 98 House members, all of which are running for election right now. All those positions are up. 49 legislative districts. So they're, again, they convene the second Monday of each year in January, 60 days in short years, 105, as I mentioned, in odd years. We're going into that 105-day session. So this, again, I think many of you are probably familiar with this, but sometimes the process gets, again, it's kind of complicated. I wouldn't worry about it too much. The real goal here is communicating with your legislators. Again, just a little bit more on the process. Bills are introduced in a House of Origin, either by a senator or a House member. They go through a committee process. Sometimes they have to go through a fiscal committee if they cost money. They go to the Rules Committee, which is a whole little black box that I wouldn't worry too much about at this stage. They have to be voted on. That's floor action in their House of Origin. If they pass out of their House of Origin, then they go to the opposite house and they start the whole process over again. And if they make it all the way through that, then they end up on the governor's desk for signature. So it is a complicated process in this sense, and it often is intended to not pass bills more than pass bills. It's certainly easier to stop a bill from moving forward than to get a bill passed. Again, I don't want anybody to get like intimidated by this process. You know, think back to that Schoolhouse Rock video, I'm just a bill. You know, it is a process. It also means that there's a lot of opportunity for engagement in the process. And I think that's the takeaway that I want everybody to know, is that there's a lot of room for your voice in this process. And so, you know, getting involved and again, talking to your local legislator, you know, being willing to testify in front of a committee, those are all great ways to engage in this, you know, somewhat complicated process. Couple of other, this maybe is a little bit of a commercial break for you, but AWC hosts a legislative conference in February that we encourage you to consider attending. Our City Action Days, it's February 15th and 16th next year. We intend to be back in person in Olympia after a couple of years of online legislative conferences. And it's a great opportunity to network, get more information about what's going on in your currently in the legislature, and be an Olympian, have that opportunity to engage in person in the process. And then something that we started this session and will continue next year are our weekly city action calls for our city officials via Zoom on Friday afternoons, where we do quick updates on kind of the latest hot topics that week. And those were really fun, really engaged last session. So they ran about 30, 45 minutes max. And so if you're just wanting to tune in and find out what's going on, those are great opportunities. And we'll put all this out in our newsletters going up to the legislative session and throughout the legislative session. So we put out our legislative bulletin monthly during the interim and weekly during the session. So, and that's our main communication tool and way to get information out to all of you about what's going on. This is my last slide, and it is just a reminder that we're here for you, and the whole thing about there's no dumb questions. If it's a question about the process, if it's a question about a topic, a policy issue, just where to get started, feel free to call me or any member of our team. We're happy to help. And we want you to be as comfortable as you can with this process and staying engaged in the legislative work on behalf of all cities. So I'm gonna, that's my presentation. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Candace. I'm sure there's going to be some. I know I have a few. Anyone? Stephanie, did you have any questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have questions as much as I just had a couple comments. So I want to thank Candace for coming in today. And I think it's a strong testament to your training, Candace, that I went to one of your trainings when I was just getting started as a council member. And I've been beating the drum to everyone that we have got to have a legislative agenda ever since then. It's so important for us to do this work and come together with a strong message as a team, as a whole council, so that we're representing the message for everyone and not just my message when I'm reaching out to our representatives and state senator. So thank you for that. And also I wanted to give a plug that I also appreciated the weekly action quick updates last year. I went to quite a few of those, and there were quite a few times that something came up in the city in a meeting that I knew the up-to-date information when others did not, because I listened in on that. So thank you so much for all of that. And I'm just so excited that we're having this conversation and the city manager is moving this forward, because this really is something that I've been talking about, and we really need to be able to go and advocate to our representatives and state senator for what we need as a city that's going to move us forward. So thank you for coming today.
Thanks for that. I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed those Friday calls. We did too.
Other questions from council? Candace, I have a, did you, Sean? Go ahead, Sean.
Are there any cities of our size, 20,000, 22,000 that do this advocacy really well that we might want to emulate or make connections with?
Oh, yeah, definitely. This is definitely a situation where we've got, some really small cities that are really involved in really large cities. So now you asked me like a specific city name, something I freeze, and I can't think of like a single city out there besides Mill Creek at the moment. But on my slides, I had a link to our webpage that had some examples of other cities' legislative agendas, and so that may be a good place to look. You've got some neighbors who are really involved in neighboring jurisdictions that get really involved. Snohomish County cities and towns have always done a really nice job of having legislative agendas, and then a joint legislative agenda in the past where they've come together. And I'm looking at Mike because he is a veteran of that process over the years. And we would hold that effort up as an example of a great way to have cities not only engage individually, but as a region and as partners amongst themselves and with the county. So you've got some great resources right there amongst you with your neighbors.
Candace, you mentioned, you mentioned that the legislature plans to go back to a full in-person session. That's a little disappointing. As you can see, you're participating in a hybrid meeting, as I think most local jurisdictions are moving to, and it'll probably be permanent. I personally like it because I think it's improved the engagement of the community. So I hope that the legislature will go back to some kind of hybrid process. For those of you not aware, if you ever participate in a committee in Olympia, you can drive several hours in the morning to get down to Olympia to sit on a panel for 3 minutes, and your panel may or may not even get to speak. So it's the sausage making process isn't pretty down there. So I would hope they move to a more of a hybrid model.
I think there's still that opportunity potentially.
Good.
They haven't determined exactly how they're gonna do that in the coming session, but they are still talking about how they might incorporate virtual committee testimony in addition to in-person committee testimony. So I don't think that door is shut. I think there is still, they're exploring it. They're trying to figure out how they'll manage both. And we've encouraged them to do so, because it has been very popular and so much easier for everyone to be engaged without that long drive for that 2 or 3 minutes of testimony.
Yeah, Senator Lovick was in the room briefly at the beginning of the meeting, but we didn't get the chance to ask him. The second comment is on the PRA reform. Please don't let that fall off the agenda. That has been a big issue for our city over the last few years. We've spent an inordinate amount of time, and I'm sure our city attorney's partners are very happy with the request, or the work, but we'd like to see some kind of reforms to rein that in. The Public Works Trust Fund is interesting. The state's revenues have been continually growing over the last few years, yet they keep raiding the Public Works Trust Fund. All I can think of is the bully in the schoolyard stealing all the kids' lunch money. With the revenues increasing, we need to leave some of that money at home, or alternatively, I'd like to see some discussion on leaving more of the construction sales tax or retail sales tax in the local community so we can deal with growth. That's a big issue we're dealing with our comp plan amendment coming up. And, we hear about the need to deal with schools and to deal with roads, but thanks to a watch salesman in Mukilteo, we don't have the same ability to deal with the road infrastructure as we did 25 years ago. So I'd like to see a discussion of how we can leave some of those, particularly the construction sales tax, leave more of that in the local communities so we can put to some of those infrastructure and other, mitigate some of the impacts that we hear about from our residents with dealing with new growth. And the last thing is annexation incentives. You know, we periodically talk about it, but it doesn't get very far because we don't have the same incentives that were in place back in the 2000s for a brief period of time for cities to consider annexing some of their unincorporated urban growth areas. So that's an issue that I think was worthy of further discussion at AWC.
That's great. That's a great, it's a great list. And again, as you're looking at your own legislative agenda, things to include, I'll note on the Public Works Trust Fund or Public Works Assistance Account, the long-term sweeps of those funds that the legislature adopted are set to expire at the end of the 2023 fiscal year. And that's what we're really trying to push them to let those expire as they're supposed to and let those dollars return to the fund. And that's a considerable amount of money. So that is definitely a focus. And I take to heart the other things you mentioned as well, but I wanted to mention that on the Public Works account.
Other questions, comments? Connie?
Hi, thank you for coming and presenting to us. I just have one question about, is it the Rules Committee that is taking it upon themselves to determine how the hybrid versus everyone back in Olympia is going to play out? Is there a group of people among the legislators that we could reach out to? I know people have gotten more involved, right? Being able to present their testimonies from their homes, it's just gotten a lot more people very much involved. And is there a group of people that are working on those rules, or is it the entire body?
It's really kind of the leaders of the caucuses
Okay.
who will make those decisions, but I certainly communicate that to your local legislators and make that pitch. But the leaders of the caucuses who will make that that eventual decision.
Thank you.
Steffi and I have talked about getting on the calendar for Senator Levick and Representative Byrd to come in and speak with us after the election and before the end of the year, so we can have some of those conversations. Anything else? Well, thank you, Candace, for all you're doing on our behalf. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. And again, thanks for this time. It's great to kind of talk about it at this stage of the interim, and let me know if there's anything else I can help with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Candace.
Okay, that brings us to 6D, Veterans Day Events Update. Mr. Harder.
Thanks, Asa. Mayor Pro Tem, council members, thank you. Asa, you'll have to keep up with me on this one, but we just thought it was a good timing to present to you guys what's going on with Veterans Day. I'm sure does anybody remember, November 2019 was the last one. That was 1,100 days ago. It's a long time, right? So, Jody and myself and leadership felt that we were with a lot of the events this year, we're bringing it back to basics. With last year, with the Memorial Day and Veterans Day, we wanted to listen to the veterans to find out what they wanted and do it for them. And that's how we're going about this Veterans Day ceremony and parade. So listening to them, but just real quick to talk about, next slide, Asa, just with the ceremony. We did this last year. Memorial Day was pretty much open, but this year it will be an open ceremony, follow the same guidelines we have in the past. We're going to have Chaplain Nick Lewis there and remarks from hopefully some city council members. As well as what we've had in the past. We'll have the chorale, the bugler player, and we're not sure if we're gonna record or stream live, do both, do none, but we are gonna have the ceremony at the Veterans Monument. Next slide. So this year, I don't know if we've done this before, but we have a Veterans Day Community Committee. This is comprised of, there's actually 5 of them on here. So we have 2 from the Army. We have Kitty LaFazia, who's a disabled U.S. Army Sergeant Vietnam era veteran and helps manage one of the American Legion posts. And our executive advisor is Larry Beach. You can see there, he has a lot of accreditation there. He is highly involved. And then we also have Gary Walderman, who is also United States Air Force veteran and executive director of the Heroes Cafe. He wasn't in this picture, but these guys collectively together know everybody. And we've been working with them. We've had a few meetings. We've got another one next week. It's all coming together. So I'm here. One of the first things is to say it's going to happen. It's going to be this we're not going to have a plane fly over, but we are going to have a lot of cars. Let's go to the next slide, Asa. The Grand Marshal still to be determined. We have great candidates. We'll let you know as soon as we know that. But, you know, the police, JROTC, classic cars. We've got the Glacier Peak High School marching band, lots of military vehicles, JBLM marching band. We got our MC, Chris Jones. If you were at Party in the Parks, he's going to be our MC again. And lots of volunteers. So we've got a lot to do. We just got to figure out how to put them all together. So with the next slide, it shows this is the map that we've used in the past. It's going to be very similar to what we've done. The only difference is that in the past, I have to admit, I've never been to one of our Veterans Day events, but there's not going to be a parade performance area. I guess this was a part where the parade would come to a halt and people would perform. We're going to make this a flow. We're not going to have llamas in this event. It's going to be, or horses, or there has to be an affiliation with our armed forces. So we're keeping it back to the basics about the veterans. And then we're going to have all the VIPs. You're going to be, who's been at the Veterans Day? Yeah. Who's been in the VIP area? Just on a stage? Are you guys on way up there? Yeah. Sounds cool. We've got our stage. Everything's been secured. So we're on target for that as well. So next slide, Asa. Yep. So tell all your friends, tell everybody you know. We've got our on the Veterans Day page on the website. We've got an online form. We've got a PDF form. Our community committees already circulating these throughout the community, sending them out, putting them at the Heroes Cafe. But like I said, we're actually going to have so many that we're probably gonna have to turn people down. But we're going to have more than enough to entertain everybody for that 45 minutes to an hour that the parade usually lasts. Next slide. Yeah. That's it. Any questions? Yes.
First question. I like, this is a unique idea. So anybody who's in the parade has to be associated with the armed forces. In the past, we've had associations and organizations like Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, Lions Club, other groups that wanted to be in the parade to support the armed forces and support the veterans. But we're not going to allow them to do that going forward. Is that correct?
There is some association there, right? They do support them. I guess we're trying to say we just don't want everybody and anybody to be in there. I'm trying to figure out why we had llamas in the parade before. But, that's what we're just trying to keep it about them, right? So, I mean, I think Kiwanis is a great idea, of course, because they support, they're going to be helping us. So yeah, I don't doubt they're going to be in the parade. I believe so. I could be wrong. Jody might be able to chime in from the speakers, maybe not.
So maybe people should complete the application and say why they feel they would like to be in the parade to support the veterans. And then you would decide if that makes sense.
On the form, it actually it says all this, and it asks about your theme, what your association is with the armed forces.
Okay, great.
From there, and then we get to decide. So,
And then you would, okay, great. That makes sense.
and I'm sure there's going to be a point we're going to lay out all these forms on this table and trying to figure out what makes the most sense.
Other questions?
Scott, I have a question,
This-
actually
this screen
similar
Turns off. It went
similar
black,
to
so
John's.
press it.
Stephanie?
I have a question similar to John's because the Girl Scouts usually are in our Veterans Day parade, and I was at least kind of under the understanding they probably are going to be in our parade. Is that true? Or
Stephanie, I'll just jump in. Sorry, Scott. So we didn't mean that presentation to exclude a bunch of people, but what we're not going to do, more specifically, is that we're not going to have booths on the side with different vendors. We're not going to have say if it's, I'm gonna throw out something like, say, a mattress company, and they just wanted to advertise their store, that's not going to be, but say they were marching with people representing one of the branches of the armed forces, then that would be okay. So it's mostly just not an advertising thing, is the thought process behind that.
Okay, thank you, Jody. Did I participate in two? But anyway, I don't remember at least the one I was in, that there being much advertising type things in the event anyway. So thank you for that clarification.
Councilmember Duque.
I think I might be coming across it separately than how Steph. And did you mute me?
I meant to mute Steckler.
I was going to say thank you for making it, for going back to basics, and by making it for how can we honor, what can we do, who's part of it? Because that's, as much as I love parades, and my children love to get the candy thrown at them, and I hope that continues. I did always think it was, oh, well, then I will bring my own candy for my own kids to hold.
It's a big issue, I guess.
Yeah, we can, but for me, it's one of those things where I do recall going to, this is one of my favorite parades to attend to, going to it and seeing so many people and going, I don't see the connection. I don't know what kind of, is this just a community parade? Should it be a separate thing? Or is this for veterans? And so I would encourage anyone who wants to participate, maybe it's looking at your membership and seeing, is there a mother, for Girl Scouts as an example, is there a mother or father who served, who they're the ones who are walking with their child, or their grandparents, or whoever it might be, an aunt or uncle, because then that's seems like a really great connection. And I'm really thankful that you're putting this together, and that this is happening. But I would continue to encourage to find those tie-ins in any way possible.
Yeah, so again, I think that's what's so great about this community committee is, when we get all these applications, the Girl Scouts apply, we're going to lay these out, and it doesn't matter what I think, it's going to be about them and the veterans. They're going to be like, oh no, we want them in because they've done this before and this is what we want. So that's what it's going to come down to.
Before I get to John, Naomi, can you change the screen so Mayor Pro Tem isn't looming over us so large? It's just a little bit awkward. Councilmember Steckler.
Oh, well, Councilmember Duque, he saw my light. You're absolutely right on the candy. You cannot have people throwing candy at the kids. That's a liability like crazy. But what they have done in the past, since you went around, was they did make us council members schlep out buckets of candy early and hand it to kids and stickers. So they did get their candy, but in a safe and sane kind of way.
That's on the schedule. Yes, we've got our youth
Okay, yeah.
advisory.
So the
board to
kids
help
did
with
get
that.
their candy,
Was that
council
at
members.
the veterans or the Memorial Day?
Oh, all of
parade?
them. Every time there was a
Veterans.
parade, we were
Was it
given
both?
buckets, yeah, to schlep, and it was safe, but the kids got the candy.
So, and then of course, the other good news I just want to say is, I guess in the past, we've contracted somebody to do this for 2 months, an organization. And so this community committee is helping out. They're not on staff. They're all volunteers. They want nothing in return. They just want to be a part of it, which has been
Nice.
super awesome. So, and I do have to say, I'm a little disappointed. I thought I was going to have a crowd to speak to tonight, and they're all gone.
But they were here earlier.
They were here and they left. So anyway.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Scott.
I'll be here all night.
Okay, on to new business. Director Todd, LDC contract.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I will share my screen and get us started here. So I want to make sure that shows up. Everybody's seeing that okay?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, so we are here tonight for a quick update and an amendment to the professional service agreement for interim planning manager services. So you may remember Tom Rogers, who'd served for 30 years, retired back in April. Earlier in the year, we had started recruiting for that replacement, but we just didn't do very well. And so when Tom retired, we put in place a contract with LDC as a local company for interim planning manager services. And very specifically, we're looking for somebody to fill in and continue with our staff until we got that spot filled. As I mentioned earlier, we were not successful through July. And so at that point, council may remember took an action to change the salary ranges and reclassify that position. And that has helped. So now we do have some good prospects. We had some interviews week before last, and we're down to some finalists now. And in the process of making some offers, and we're hoping that's going to work out for us. But regardless, it's going to take another 1 or 2 months minimum for that person to get done where they are, give proper notice, get onboarded, and do a handoff. Specifically in the contract, LDC assigned Mr. Clay White, who you've met. He is a Mill Creek resident and a past director of community development at the county, and has helped out with interim spots at Everett and Snohomish, and it's worked really, really well. We've gotten really good value of Clay, both for mentoring and managing our planning staff, but also helping on a whole range of things, from looking at what kind of codes are out of date, what we're doing, it's good processes and processes that need improvement. And so we've been working on all those kinds of things. It's kind of like having a consultant come in and do a soup to nuts analysis of the department. So it's been great to have him both being a worker bee for us and also to guide us in moving forward. We would like to continue to have him work for us, but we reached the contract limit. And so we need to amend it. So we're here tonight to do that. The compensation limit in the contract was one of those where it was only the city manager contract authority, which is up to $50,000. So the contract will expire at $49,999, and we spent that. And so I'm asking to amend the contract to put it to $75,000. I don't think we'll go that far, but depending on who we select and how long it takes them to get onboarded, we might use another 1, 2, maybe 3 months worth of services. And so the idea is to extend that contract, that compensation limit to $75,000. The duration stays unchanged. It was through the end of the year. We will not need to amend that. So with that, I'll take questions, or if you're ready, there's the motion.
Thank you, Mike. Any questions, comments?
Mayor, at this point, then I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving amendment number 1 to contract 2022-1675, a contract for interim planning management services, increasing compensation limit on that said contract to $75,000 or until a duration of 12/31/2022.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes 7-0. Director Todd, keep moving us into solid waste.
Thank you. So now the trick is getting the second presentation to come up is the trick. Can I do it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 6-0. Thank you. My math is bad as usual.
There we go. Share screen. The test. I think I'm making it. There we go. So again, thank you, city manager, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and city manager for allowing me to talk about the adoption of the 2021 update of the Snohomish County Solid Waste Comprehensive Plan. It's a mouthful in 2021. My goodness, here we are halfway through, 3/4 of the way through 2022. What's going on? So I had to do some research. This is something that the city has had a requirement for as long as we've been, I think it was the early 90s, that this is a requirement through the state to have a comprehensive plan for solid waste. And it used to be called RCW 70.95, but it changed during the 2022 session to RCW 78, 205, 240. It requires all cities and the counties in which those cities reside to have a solid waste comprehensive plan. I didn't know this. One of the many things back in history, I don't think I've ever heard this before, but we have an interlocal agreement with the county to do that. That interlocal agreement was signed in 2003. It's a 25-year agreement, 30-year agreement, something like that. Anyway, it goes through the end of next year. Under that agreement, there is the county leads the process, and all of the cities have a voting spot on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. We have not participated for many years, but I took a look at who has been doing that. There's about nine cities that were involved, and they're good people that have been working very hard on this for the last couple of years through COVID and a lot of changes. So they've developed a draft plan. Throughout that, they've done a bunch of work with public input. They've worked with the state agencies that are going to sign off on this eventually, talked to various cities, and I think they've come together with a very good plan. It has two basic goals. One of them is around sustainability and climate change, and one of them is about efficiency of services. And underneath those two goals, there's a bunch of supporting policies and recommended actions. I put that in the packet for your reading pleasure. Actually, it's kind of interesting to hear the history of how solid waste went from not having any before the industrial age to throwing at landfills to doing other things with it, including our own McCullum Park used to be a landfill until the 60s. So that is a little bit of history that you can pick up if you care to read those 40-something pages in your packet. What they need to do, is right now that draft plan has been created. Again, it was 2021. I think it's driven by the state requirements for how often it has to be done. There must have been some delay. The point is, at this point, we need to have the next step is all the cities need to adopt this by resolution, this 2021 update. That allows the county council to adopt the resolution. And then it runs through the gauntlet of approval by the Department of Ecology, who subordinately goes through the Department of Agriculture and Utilities and Transportation Commission. That's an iterative process. Then the Solid Waste Advisory Committee will make some adjustments, and we will have a comp plan that will last for another 5 or 6 years, I believe is the frequency on that. My advice is that this is a good thing to adopt. My advice is that I or somebody else in my group ought to start participating. So I've reached out and asked that we be on the mailing list, other than for the approvals, that we'll pay attention to what's going on. I should point out that Waste Management, as our contract supplier, is also involved in this process. Those contract suppliers are part of the entire process, as well as the county as the main hauler of the waste out of the county and the collection stations. And again, you can read about that in the packet if you care to. Once again, going quickly, there's the motion. If you care to move that direction, or if you got any questions, I'll try to answer them. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Director Todd. Are there any questions?
Excuse me, I had the one question just to confirm one of the notes that I had read, and I just want to read this off to confirm that this is accurate. Cities such as Mill Creek have not been assigned any specific new duties in this plan. And I take that to mean that there will be no new duties or burdens or whatnot put on us based on this particular plan, just to confirm that, Director Todd.
Yes, that's exactly correct. I put that in there. I went through the chart. It's one of 20 or 30 pages into the packet in terms of the draft plan. I looked at that very carefully. Most of this falls on the county to do, or it falls on cities to partner with their waste haulers. So when you look at this, there's nothing really new we're doing, other than the things we've all been doing for the last 20 years is recycling more, doing a better job of handling hazardous waste. So you don't throw the batteries in the landfill anymore. You don't throw them in the trash anymore. You don't incinerate things. So all those things are there. So I didn't see anything was onerous or unrealistic for us to participate in. And again, it doesn't fall directly on cities to do anything because we're in this ILA with the county. It's a very good question. I think we're safe doing this.
Any other questions?
Mayor, if I could, then I'll make a motion
Please do.
to adopt a resolution adopting the 2021 update of the Snohomish County Compensation Solid and Hazardous Waste Management Plan.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
Mayor,
Yes.
I was gonna, but it works just perfect in the motion. I just want to clarify. So based on that discussion and Councilmember Paddock's question, I'm assuming there's no new financial burden to us at all under this new plan.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Excuse me, who second?
Councilmember Allison.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? The motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Todd. Okay, now on to opioid settlement. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. As we all know, the opioid endemic has created havoc across, not just our country or region. not so much in Mill Creek, but it is prevalent and has been in many cities across our region. Some recent stats to give you some idea of the severity is, for example, at University of Washington Medical Center did report in 2019, the number of deaths by, I think, about 852, increased about 43% to in 2020 to about 1,219. So that doesn't include all the other individuals that are also that haven't got to that point. So it is a very severe endemic that needs to be addressed. In 2016, the Washington State Attorney General's office commenced litigation against 3 opioid distributors. About 6 months later, they settled. The distributors would pay up to $518 million. 430 of that is left to the state after attorney's fees. Without doing all the math, explaining all the math, it boils down to about $1,500 to about $3,000 a month for the city of Mill Creek, approximately. But what's important is to understand too is the potential of these funds that could be used collectively across our cities in this county. So right now, where they are among the 125 cities that or local governments that are part of this, they have about 76 participants now. They're looking to hit about 116, which is about 40 more. It might be a little reach, but I believe, and the leadership team believes that it is our obligation to be a part of this move. So we are asking the council to approve a resolution for the city to participate in this settlement of the opioid litigation brought about by the state of Washington, and authorize myself, the city manager, to sign the participation form, the allocation agreement, and the memorandum of understanding between the Washington municipalities and any related documents to receive settlement funds subject to final review by a city attorney. And with that, we'll take any questions.
Councilmember Steckler.
I'm curious, what is the rationale some of these non-compliance cities are using for not wanting to sign on board? I'm just curious.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question? That was.
Sure. A number of cities have chosen not to sign up. I'm just curious as to what is their rationale for not signing on with this settlement?
I do not know.
They've not made any statements or anything.
No, we haven't heard any. I have not had the opportunity to reach out to any local. Anyone else? Right.
So there, some cities may not want to participate because they could want to preserve their rights to pursue an action of their own. That's a large and complicated and expensive process, but they could. That's one rationale. The other is they might feel that they don't want to participate, but feel that their participation dollars would still go to stay in the region. There's several regions that are set up under this rather complicated settlement agreement. For instance, Snohomish County will be part of a North Sound region with a number of the northern counties, and so that'll be an organization to develop programs and to administer programs and the funds. So in the case of Mill Creek, for instance, it could participate in this North Sound group and then participate both in governance and also devote its dollars to that group's efforts rather than trying to do something on its own. There's some fairly onerous. You have to use the proceeds for approved types of activities to fight opioid abuse. There's a lot of paperwork and a lot of reporting that goes along with that. So there may well be a benefit in banding together in regional jurisdictions to do that and deliver programs that way.
Do you have a recommendation to us as to which is the most advantageous to us, to band together or to approve it as a single city?
I would, I think you can approve it and then devote your dollar and then allocate your dollars to the regional projects.
Okay, thank you.
John, John, I
Mayor?
think as much of it as people, jurisdictions don't know, they need to complete the paperwork to be able to participate. That's what happened with us. I think we got a notice a few months ago and kind of slipped through the cracks with everything we had going on, and they reminded us, we need this paperwork and we need to get to whatever the number is out of.
Yeah, and Mayor, that's a good point. There's a deadline in the settlement that
Right.
this has to occur by September 23rd.
Mhm.
And I think what you're seeing around the region tonight is a lot of city councils have this on their agenda
Yeah.
tonight.
City manager?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. One correction I'd like to make, the deputy city manager reminded me that I said 1,500 to 3,000 per month. It's per year. Approximately. Thank you.
Other questions? Motions?
I don't want to be the motion pig, but I'll go ahead. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and approve I don't see an actual motion up here, so I'll make one up as I go. It's in the packet here. Unfortunately, all I got tonight was the agenda. Would you do it? Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to make a resolution to approve the city of Mill Creek's participation in the settlement of the opioid litigation brought by the state of Washington.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none or seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries 6-0. Thank you, Martin. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda this evening. Item A, approval of checks number 64991 through 65127 and ACH wire transfers in the amount of $404,068.30. The audit committee was Councilmember Steckler and Councilmember Duque substituting for Councilmember Cavallari. Were there any exceptions?
No exceptions.
No exception.
Item B, payroll and benefit ACH payments in the amount of $658,828.19. Any exceptions?
No exceptions.
No exception.
And city council meeting minutes of September 6, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain. Meeting minutes. Wasn't meeting.
Fair enough. The motion is passed 5-0-1 with Councilmember Paddock abstaining. Under reports, if there's no objection, I forgot to change this in the agenda. If there's no objection, we'll do item B and then do item A and C. So we'll have the city manager's reports and then we'll get to council reports. Any objection? Okay.
That'd be B and C, then A, correct?
Well, we can do C if you'd like. I was gonna do BAC, but if you want to do BCA, we can do that too. What's the pleasure?
I would prefer BCA.
Let's do BCA if there's no objection. We'll do BCA.
Thank you, Mayor. Council members. Reports tonight, I have two. One is the COVID update. As you can see, the plexiglass is gone. The city of Mill Creek has updated our COVID plan. It's called now to make masking optional, not required. We still are addressing a piece of that policy, but for the most part, the masking is not required and the front doors are open on City Hall North and South. We did relieve the partitions in the plexiglass in our passport services, just to ensure safety. I also wanted to say thank you to our community for the patience. I've received numerous calls and emails over the past number of months questioning us about our policy and that extends not only at our program, across the programs, but through our participants or the businesses that actually ran in our building in City Hall North. So it was a combined effort with everyone. We appreciate those stakeholders helping us ensure the safety of our customers as well as the employees that actually ensure the safety of our employees as well throughout all these months. So the second is an update on staffing. Last week, September 6th, the Guild approached our council asking to be participants or in the process of hiring our police chief. As you're all aware, we did hire an executive recruiting firm, Columbia Limited. I did reach out to them and they will be including our Guild in the process. With that, I'll take any questions.
One comment?
Councilmember Duque and then Councilmember Paddock.
See,
Oh, was that, I'm sorry, I thought Councilmember Duque and Councilmember Steckler.
he did see my light. I just wanted everyone to
I did.
acknowledge that he does look up.
Be careful or I'll mute you.
Oh, I should just keep going then. I think you answered this already, because of the second part of your statement for your first update. But, the impact for recreational programs that are in the building, does that mean it's optional? And by optional, is it based off of who runs the program? Like if the instructor wants to keep masks, would it be I just curious about that process. What does that look like? And then I still have a follow-up question.
Any programs on city facilities, masks are not required, they're optional.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. And then I'd be really curious to when you have time, which I doubt this is like on the list, but lessons learned about what we found when it came to our response to be able to, looking at overall kind of the response to putting up the plexiglass, anything lessons learned, I think would be something, while it's still somewhat fresh in our mind, would be helpful, is my recommendation. And that would be it.
Councilmember Steckler.
Actually, he was next.
Councilmember.
I did not push my button.
Oh, you didn't push your button. Okay, well then I'm next. City manager, being as I'm the councilman who has harangued you about opening up the city hall, I want to be the one to say thank you for making our city hall safe for our city employees all this time, for your councilmen, for the city citizens that have come in here. Thank you for what you've done. We've made it through this COVID dilemma, and you have kept your people safe and you've kept many of your citizens safe. So now that it's passed, I think it's time that somebody say thank you to you for all that you've done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to say though, it's not just me, it's many of our prior employees that also implemented these policies that started during the pandemic. It's one reason why the city of Mill Creek was probably the only city that was open during a certain time and for a certain length of time as well. I just kept it going and made the decision to do that just to ensure the safety. So thank you.
I think we're still on your reports.
That'd be all, Mayor. Thank you. I'll hand it over to C.
Yes,
To
we're
see.
doing BCA.
So I think that means I'm up. Is that true?
Yes.
I got the wrong screen showing. Oh, my goodness. Now, do I have the comprehensive plan periodic update grant on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, this is difficult. So what I want to do is report real quickly. So this is the state legislature put together a funding package for all cities to have some money for this comp plan update. Remember, they also pushed the deadline from the middle of 2024 to the end of 2024 for cities of our classification and our location in the state. They made money available. And so that, what I'm showing you right there on the screen is we are in this category of 3,000 to 49,999. So we get $125,000. It's formulaic, it's not competitive. All we have to do is apply. with our policy of anytime we go for a grant, we staff are going to come to you to make sure we're not going out on a limb and getting a grant you don't want. But I highly advise you take this money because we need it. We're probably going to spend $300,000 plus on our comp plan update. And so this is welcome dollars. It comes in two pieces. Half of it has to be used before the end of this biennium. So the state biennium, June 30th, 2023. The other half, 62.5, will be in the second part of the biennium. It's the kind of money you can use for lots of different things, very flexible. It could apply to staff time. We haven't typically done that kind of thing. If we had a way to log staff hours, we could do it, but we'll probably use it on consultant contracts. We do not have a lot of staff that has experience or capacity for doing some of the technical things that are required for a comp plan update. So Clay White has put together a very easy to do agenda, so long as we get this going quickly, with some tasks like reviewing our existing comp plan, looking at the gap analysis, what we need to do to come up to date with the Vision 2050 plan, a public engagement plan, a data inventory of what we have available to us, what we need to go get, and then kind of scope out what our update is going to be. Do we have to do an EIS on that, which will add a lot of money or subtract a lot of money, depending on how far we have to go, depending on the kind of changes we're going to make. Those are all things we would do between now and June of 2023. In the 2024, by the end of or middle of 2024, we would do a draft outline, a draft capital plan, a draft comprehensive plan, and again take the second half of the money and then use that at the and finish up the plan ourselves by the end of 2024. The deadline for applying is at the end of this month, but the sooner we apply, the sooner they process the paperwork, the sooner we can go out and find some consultant help and start charging money against this money. So that's what we're bringing to you tonight. Your action is mostly a head nod, or you can make a motion. We need a letter from the mayor as part of our application package that he supports this. And they, in this case, mayor means the council, because we're a council manager form of government. So if you got questions about this, it's not very complicated, but I'd be happy to answer questions. And or if you have any consternation about letting the mayor make that, sign a letter to that effect, this would be the time to bring it up. I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Speak now or forever hold your peace.
One of those.
Councilmember Allison.
Hi, thank you. So I just have a question about the partial planning that's also shown on this screenshot.
Yeah.
Is that 20,000 more that we could go after?
No, so cities under GMA, either you fully plan under GMA or you partially plan. We're a fully planning city. That's why we're in that top category.
Thank you.
Good question, though. Well, thank you for looking for all the dollars. Appreciate that.
Everyone
Mayor, I
comfortable?
would support this fully.
Any objections? Okay. I trust you'll provide me with the letter that needs to be signed, Director Todd.
Mr. White will prepare that and we'll get you to sign it. Thank you.
Perfect.
Now we're going to pass it over to Frank Reinhardt for an update on, we're going to ask you to do some homework and Professor Reinhardt is going to deliver you the homework, whether you like it or not. Go ahead, Frank.
So yes, this is something between an advertisement, an announcement, and an advance apology. As I discussed with you here earlier this summer, I kind of laid out the time frame for the capital project plan and the process that I proposed to go through with council in terms of looking at that. That included bringing the draft of the projects and such to the city council over the course of 2 council meetings to consult with you on it before we put together the final draft and the financing plan to be adopted in association with the budget. And somewhere between those 2 pieces, we would also slide in the public hearing that also has to occur as part of the adoption of the capital plan. So we're slightly off our timeline here a little bit, but what I planned on doing was to bring the first of those 2 to the September 27th city council meeting. This packet's a pretty big one. We shook a lot of trees to shake out all the projects that people have been talking about over the years, but never actually really put it on the city plan. And the upshot is what I'd like to do at the first of these sessions is to bring to you that comprehensive package, just bring you all the projects that have kind of survived the concept review and the scoping review, so that you can take a look at it, ask me any questions that you have. It's a thick packet. And so my desire was to send it to the city council on next Tuesday, Tuesday, September 20th, to give you a little more time than the normal council packet review time, to spend some time with it. And again, this would be the first of two council meetings. The second council meeting that I will come to you again to consult with you on this would be the October 11th meeting. So that amounts to about 3 weeks for you to develop questions, develop concerns that you might have and such, and give us time to address those in a meaningful fashion. Right about the middle of October is about the same time that I would plan on putting out the draft project plan out to the public for public comments in anticipation of the public hearing, and then looking to bring then the adoption of the capital plan in synchronicity with the overall budget process by November. So that's my brief announcement. Is there any quick questions? Otherwise, you'll hear from me here soon.
Favorite beverage ready to sit down with the proposed plan.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, that brings us to item A. I've got 3 things on my report. I'll go from the shortest to the longest. The shortest is, as you know, the Bolt Creek fire still has Highway 2 shut down. I had to take the long way home on Sunday night. The last report I got just before the meeting was that they have reduced the evacuation levels, but the highway is still closed. The fire came down and there's lots of rock and debris and fire debris on the highway, I think particularly down around Money Creek, if you're familiar with that, the tunnel right before you get to Skycomish. If any of our residents are interested, they are taking donations of pet food and supplies at the Everett Animal Shelter. And the Red Cross and Sky Valley Chamber of Commerce are accepting monetary donations for anyone affected by the fire. And hopefully they will have the highway open here soon. The second item is, I guess, kind of old business. Last week, we approved a salary commission. The ordinance hasn't yet taken effect, and I wasn't planning on coming back to you until next meeting on the 27th with my nominees for the commission members. But I have found 5 people willing and able to serve. And so I'd like to present my nominations tonight for your consideration, and it would be subject to, if there is a motion to approve, it would be contingent upon the ordinance taking effect, which I believe is later in the week. It's been publicized, but hasn't gone into effect yet. The 5 people I am nominating for this commission are Terry Ryan, Paul Heisa, David Wood, Mindy Humphrey, and Carmen Fisher. I've spoken with each one of them. They are all ready and willing and able to serve on this commission on the expedited process that we've set up for them with the assistance from staff. So any questions, comments, motions?
Motion to approve your slate as suggested,
Contingent upon the ordinance taking effect.
contingent upon the ordinance taking effect.
Is that the correct statement of the motion, City Attorney?
I can get this working. Yeah, it would be to approve the mayor's nominees to the Independent Salary Commission on the effective date of the ordinance.
Let me correct that, on the effective date of the ordinance.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the commission is off and run, well, almost off and running once it becomes effective. Okay, the third item, I left some materials in front of each of you before the meeting. I'm sorry I couldn't circulate them sooner. You recall that back in late spring, the strong mayors in the county, which are all the mayors except for Mill Creek, Bothell, and I believe Montlake Terrace, put together an op-ed in support of the efforts to increase public safety. The mayors of Marysville and Everett are taking this to the next level, and they're planning to announce a new coalition tomorrow. That's the Mayors and Business Leaders Coalition in Support of Public Safety. I couldn't present these materials in part of the packet because this is not yet ready for public consumption. Essentially, what they're proposing to do is establish a 501c4 entity to work to lobby and advocate for public safety reforms and for funding to support local jurisdictions' efforts in public safety. This is not a knock on the AWC. AWC, as we heard earlier tonight, actually, the timing was pretty good. They have a whole host of issues they're dealing with. The intent of this coalition is to focus solely on public safety. So the second item, the first item in the packet was the proposed press release that's scheduled to go out tomorrow. The second item is the public relations proposal, which I believe is $70,500 that they are proposing to implement, this coalition is proposing to implement over the next year, so through 2023. And the first step in their request is the last two letters that they're planning to send out tomorrow, which is a request for the county council and the county executive to include in the upcoming county budget funding for 4 new prosecuting attorney positions. That's been one of the issues that's been identified is our hardworking police officers go out and do the work and make the arrest, but then for staffing and workload issues, not all the crimes get prosecuted. So the first step in this process is they're going to request additional 4 deputy prosecuting attorneys be funded for the upcoming biennium. So, oh, and the last piece, to cover the cost for the $70,500, the mayors of Everett and Marysville have committed to $15,000. The mayors of Sultan and Lake Stevens have committed to $7,500. So that's by my poor math, $45,000. And the rest of the cities, they're asking the mayors to support at the level of $3,750. So my requests of the council would be, we have, I believe, $68,000 in the council contingency. So my request is that we support using $3,750 of that to fund this effort and to authorize me to sign on to these letters and participate in the coalition, which I would keep everyone apprised of the efforts as we go forward. The intent is to do this for a year. This is a conversation I had with Mayor Naren yesterday, and evaluate at the end of the year how successful it's been and whether to move forward and continue at the same funding level, try to increase or ramp it up. But the hope is that it's not just elected officials, that we engage business leaders as well to advocate and lobby for these issues. So, and again, I apologize for not, I got these materials yesterday and I was asked not to include them publicly as part of the packet just because they're announcements that are going to go out tomorrow. So, Councilmember Steckler.
So what exactly is the 70,000 to be used for? How is that
That's
broken
the
up?
proposal. That's the budget.
What page is that?
In the packet of materials, the second item was this FM Public Affairs. This should have been included in the packet.
Mm-hmm.
So that lays out the work plan for the coming year.
From Public Affairs, I got that. Just looking for where the 70 grand.
There's a budget.
70 grand.
Oh, this is it. Okay. So 8,000 per month, for 8-month
No, it's,
period.
but now I can't find.
Website development hosting,
Where are the page numbers on the?
monthly
contract?
fee structure.
Oh, it's on the third page. So it's kind of confusing because they call it a monthly retainer, 64,000, 8,000 per month. So it's the monthly retainer of 64,000, the website development for the coalition and graphic design. So 64 and 4 and 2,500.
And the 8,000 a month, the retainer is for. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, this is, I didn't pick up on this. This is a little different than what John told me. This says it's the proposal is through April of 2023 rather than through the end of the year. But this is, I mean, if they get the funding for 70,000, this is the only work plan that's in front of them. So we'd have to come back for any further involvement of the city if we wanted to continue or not continue.
So this is for consultant services? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
It is for the public relations firm. They lay out the first couple pages of the proposal. Kind of summarizes what their plan is and what the strategy is.
So it's a public relations firm, and what will they be doing for us? All these cities? And execute a comprehensive community engagement plan. Building a message platform to bring consistency to all advocacy meeting engagements, working with coalition leadership to prepare materials supporting the coalition strategies for improving public safety. Creating a standard issue briefing presentation to use to outreach chambers of commerce. Provide training as necessary for coalition representation to serve as speakers. Developing and executing earned media outreach strategies. I am.
And I should say, add also, when I found out that Councilmember Cavalieri was not going to be here, I discussed this with him. He has not read the materials, but conceptually, he said he's on board.
I'm the same way. I've not read the materials. Conceptually, I love the idea of anything that supports public safety. I don't have any problem with $3,750. I just would like to know what it's going for.
Well, it's going to implement the strategy, and I view it as a small investment to see if we can use this coalition to help build support for our police force and the efforts. I mean, we've seen increased crime around the county and increased drug issues, and this is a step to advocate for getting more help.
Just a point of clarification, did you say that all of the strong mayor cities have already signed on?
That is my understanding, is that they've all committed to it.
Okay, and the city manager council version, 2 or 3 of them have already done it as well?
No, I don't know if they have or have not. I got the blessing of the council to sign on to the op-ed in the spring. I don't remember if Montlake Terrace and Bothell took it to their council, if the mayors took it to get signed on or not.
And we don't mean to jump on you, Mary. I know you kind of just got this out of the blue too, so. Seem like we're asking you 1,000 questions.
No, that's fine. And I got alerted to this in July, in late July, that it was coming. The reason why I didn't bring it to you is because it was ill-defined. I didn't have any
It is ill-defined.
information, and I figured that it wasn't worth the time when I just get questions I couldn't answer until they put together something more specific, so.
Mayor, sorry, I don't want to interrupt John, but since I'm up here, I can't,
I see your hand. Well, go ahead.
I have a few questions and some concerns. And first off, I'm at a disadvantage because I can't see this. I don't
Yes, you
have,
are.
since I'm not there, I don't have the information in front of me. And it's been thrown at us last minute like this, and I like to research things. So top of my mind, and without being able to see things, some concerns I have. One, I'd like to know what kind of messaging are we endorsing if we sign up on this? Messaging and words matter. If we fund this and throw in our money, are we going to have any say so what kind of messaging that they're putting out? Or is somebody else just going to be deciding what messaging is going out for everyone and how that's portrayed? And we're not going to have any oversight of that. So, because I know one thing I always try to do is make sure that I'm thinking of our whole council when I'm giving messaging. And I know we all may have different thoughts on how things should be worded, and how they'll be accepted by others, while we all want and feel very strongly about public safety. So it's very important that we are advocating for public safety. I just have concerns that are we just giving them money and then we don't have any say so on how they portray the messaging? And then without being able to read this, I really can't ascertain what kind of messaging and how this is going to be sent out. To think that is important, and how things are worded can really affect how people in the community think about it.
Stephanie, I would just say, I forgot you were participating virtually, so I couldn't get you the materials ahead of time. My understanding is that if we move forward with this, that I would be on the coalition, so I would have some input in the messaging that goes out. I'm certainly sensitive to the council's concerns about us signing on to stuff, and we'll try to, would keep the council apprised. You know, with any coalition, when you have, how many cities are in the Snohomish County, 20 plus? You know, there's only so much micromanaging of wording that all 20 cities are going to be able to do of a message. So I think the intent is to be supportive of public safety. I don't envision them taking positions that we would be concerned with or adverse to, but that's just my opinion. I'm not sure which of you is first, so I'll just go Councilmember.
Yeah.
Councilmember Duque.
Most of us right.
Okay, thank you. So I'm in agreement with everyone that I'm absolutely willing to support this. It looks, the items that they've outlined that they'll be working on seems very standard. This is what you would do. I mean, this is actually, looks very similar to proposals I submit to my clients. The one thing I didn't see here that I just wanted to flag, there's no, you mentioned that like at the year end, it would be, you know, getting an opportunity to look to see what happened, you know, or how we've moved the needle. Yeah, like a retrospective, see lessons learned, that kind of thing of what's happening. It doesn't say that they're going to put together a report of anything like that. Not that we need a formal report, but that's generally kind of included in this. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm flagging that if additional money or funding is needed, I would need to see what was done and how it's improved, because this is just a very beginning of getting our messaging together. I see that they've pointed out that, you know, we'll always be available to all coalition members, but we really need 1 or 2 primary members because they want to limit that micromanaging that you mentioned. So it all seems very smart, and I'm happy to support it. I had a question for Brian in terms of what you said for the council contingency fund. I heard, did you give a number of how much we have currently?
I believe it's around 68,000.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to, I didn't write that number fast enough. Thank you very much.
Mayor,
Yeah.
it's about, I think 62 or 63 and change. The cash, but the budget amount's actually 10,000 right now, so there is nothing there. No expenditures at this point.
Councilmember Allison.
You know. you can- Okay, so yeah, I can get behind authorizing the 3,700 to have this kind of built up. You know, looks like a PR campaign to make sure they're going after the right kinds of things that the citizenry really wants. So yes, you know, about time, right? This is a good thing. I do have a question though about the 2 letters. So the 2 letters that you're being asked to sign on to, I totally think that we need more deputy prosecutors in our county. We don't get charges filed and we don't get convictions in this county, and it's not a good situation. But how are we going to hold the prosecuting attorney's office accountable once everyone signs off on these letters and hopefully there's authorization to put more resources in that office? You know, how are we going to then know that funding those extra spots is actually making a difference?
I think there's a lot of questions being answered as we go forward. One piece I realized I did not include, since it is a 501c3, they have bylaws and they have officers. I forgot to include the 1-page minutes, so I can briefly read them to you. Members in attendance: Cassie Franklin, John Naring. It looks like the officers are going to be the 2 of them, and Russell Witta out of Sultan. Just trying to see if there's anything else material in here. They elected the officers. It's basically the 3 of them. There are a lot of questions. This isn't a commitment that we're being asked to have renewed. I mean, if we decide after 6 to 12 months that this coalition isn't achieving what it was hoped to achieve, or if we have questions about why it's doing what it's doing or how it's messaging, I'm happy to pull back, and we can choose not to fund anymore. But I think this is something worth exploring personally. Councilmember Steckler.
I 100% agree with supporting public safety. The dollar amount is not a problem.
My problem, and it's interesting you brought that up, Councilmember Allison. This has been an issue about prosecutors, and I think if enough cities bring it up and stand behind it, I think there's a message that goes out that we've got to make the funding available because we clearly do not have the prosecutors in place for the number of crimes that the police are bringing in. And they're just turning the people loose, and that's so demoralizing to our police force. So prosecutors are a critical element until we can stand up and get that funding for them. This is going to be an ongoing issue. So I only can hope that they would listen to the cities. I would not vote against this, but I wouldn't vote for it because this statement of work has the vaguest list of deliverables I've ever seen. I don't know if they're going to execute against it or not against it because I read through this list and read through this list again, and I tell myself, what exactly could I hold them accountable to bring forward? It's a very vague list. I'm not quite sure as to what exactly they're going to say or do in these. What are the goals and objectives of these deliverables? What are we trying to accomplish with them? I don't see it. So I think the proposal, it's flawed, but I'm definitely not against it. I would just ask that they fine tune their deliverables under the statement of work and make them a little bit clearer. I think the concept is great. I just think this proposed strategies is exactly what they say. It's proposed strategies, not deliverables.
Mayor Holtzclaw, are you able to divulge the 50C4 entity name?
Yeah, it's on one of the documents. It's the Mayors and Business Leaders Coalition for Public Safety.
Okay.
Is that a recent coalition? Was that recently created for the purpose of this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of the right words. I think a lot of the questions that have been asked are very good ones and are things that are going to be fleshed out as this coalition moves forward and figured out how it can use its resources to best advocate and achieve the goals. The goals are, I agree, they're ill-defined entirely because we don't know what all the solutions are. And some of this, so yeah, I wish I had more answers for you. I'm conveying what I was able to convey. So it's a question of whether or not, in my mind, we think it's worthwhile to be at the table for $3,700 and see if we can influence and make something productive out of this. So that's my ask. It's up to you.
I'm in support of it. It's better than doing nothing. And by banding together with the other cities, we border a lot of county area. So that concerns me, like hopefully it's, it would be countywide, whatever was put forth, but the prosecutors are definitely, they're resources that cover the whole county. So yeah, I agree with everything everybody else was saying. It is a little vague, but you have to start somewhere, and $3,700 seems like a small enough number of dollars that I can get behind it.
And I will add, if the council supports moving forward to this, I will commit to regularly updating and participating in the coalition meetings so I can report back to you on what is being accomplished and what they're trying to achieve. I'm sorry. Well, since I'm asking authorization for some money to be dispersed, I think it'd be appropriate to authorize me, if the motion would be to authorize me to participate in the coalition and sign on to the letters and for the funding from the council contingency fund of $3,750.
So I'm motion to see, and I forgot everything you just said because I should have written it down as you were saying it out loud. To see, this is the problem when I don't see it. Yeah, I move to have the mayor participate in the mayor's launch for coalition to address public safety and to disperse or to allocate the $3,750. Is there anything else, Grant?
From the council.
From the council contingency fund.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I guess the one thing I'd say is there's clearly agreement, there's a problem that very much needs to be solved. And as the other council member Allison had mentioned, this is a small amount of money to do something. And if the majority of our peer and sister cities have decided to take this path, I don't want to be the one that says we shouldn't. So.
There's no further discussion. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Mayor, I would like to abstain, and I want on the record that it's not that I do not, that I very much support public safety, but I don't feel, since I cannot actually see the documents and see what we're voting on, that I should be voting on it.
Fair enough. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll go back to the Mayor Pro Tem for her report tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. Had a health board meeting today. They are working very hard to work on getting the transition for the health department underneath the for the health board underneath the executive's office at the county. So all those, there's lots of negotiations, things in the works. So that's chugging along. Also, this is not technically a report, and I don't expect that Director Todd or anyone knows about this for sure, because it's not technically Mill Creek, but I'm having lots of people ask me what's going on over there at Dumas, off of Dumas at McCollum Park, right in front of the bus station. And I saw it too. So I figured I've had enough people. I even got stopped today going to my mailbox. So I thought I would bring it up and see if we could find out. So it looks like you do know. So, and that's really all I had. So I'll let Director Todd answer that for me. Oh, you're muted.
Two things going. So I think you're asking about at the, by McCollum Park on Dumas, all the
Yeah.
clearing that was done, that is for the Swift Orange Line. That's the northern eastern end of the Swift Orange Line. Remember, it goes down,
Yeah.
starts there, goes down 527 across 164th through Linwood Transit Center, all the way over to Edmonds College. So that's the activity they see. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Thank you so much. Because I saw it myself, and yeah, it seems like everybody's wanting to know. I literally can't get to the mailbox without being asked about it. So
Yeah.
it's the hot topic right now.
Yeah, so what they're doing, think about, there used to be a transit center there that was handling conventional buses. Now it's going to continue to be conventional buses plus the Swift terminus where they turn those things around. So it's bigger footprint. They've added a parking lot south of Park Road that will be used temporarily while they're building the new bus station, but that will become a parking lot, so they're going to add some parking overall to compensate for the parking that goes away by expanding the terminus there. That effect won't be a lot more parking, but this is a project that's going on over the next year and a half. We will also see activity on at 164th and Mill Creek Boulevard by the gas station there. They're also going to be expanding that, but that won't happen until next year. So most of the activity on Swift Orange Line is happening at McCollum Park this year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Now I know what to tell everyone.
Councilmember Paddock, any report tonight?
Thank you. Just want to thank the staff for the efficiency and efficacy of the onboarding, specifically Joe and Naomi and Jody Hawkins and Scott Harder for the very, very efficient onboarding. The way you come into an organization is usually the way you feel about an organization for quite some time. And they made that feeling very efficient and effective. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you and welcome. Councilmember Steckler.
I have a few small items. First of all, for the record, I would like to apologize to the Arts and Beautification Board Chairman Carmen Fisher and Arts and Beautification Board Person Shoshana Molman, who were here, who were in attendance today for the Great Garden Awards ceremony. And I neglected to introduce them because I was a little nervous going through that presentation. I haven't seen this many people in council chamber in the last 3 years, and it kind of threw me a little bit. So for the record, I apologize for not introducing them. I also want to mention, we have a number of new council members on board, 3 that I'm looking at right now. AWC mentioned the city action days on February 15th. Oh, yeah, February 15th and 16th. Highly, highly, highly recommend that to all 3 of you. I attended that when I started. It is a 2-day event, but it will really help train you about what goes on in the legislature. And our representatives are incredibly hospitable about bringing you into the chambers, bringing you into everything that goes on in and behind the scenes as to what goes for our legislative process. Probably one of the greatest things you could do. I'd love to go again, but let's see how many of you actually sign up. If there's enough of you, then there won't be enough money for me to go. So that's good. But I would highly recommend it for all three of you. I also wanted to mention my little social media network kind of started buzzing for you, Chief. You might have some more information about North Creek Trail. There was a bit of a escapade last night with an individual that started yelling at some people that were walking on the trail, and then they heard some sirens later, and I don't know what actually transpired, but then social media started going on about stories about what's happening on North Creek Trail. Not very safe at night. We should, a number of people got on the email trail on that. I don't know what's going on, but something that you may not want to speak about, may want to speak about, but I've really got a lot of activity. And so I wanted to bring that up tonight. Last week, I talked about bringing up, I really would like to see us move more into these committees. And I mentioned the recommendation of an ARPA committee to help move us along with a more in-depth conversation and get it out of the council meeting and get it more into offsite where we could have representation from council and city. I think these are a strong recommendation. The next one I wanted to bring up, which is why I wanted to hear, I'm glad we moved it. Thank you for moving the committee reports around, is a plan, a committee on for what we talked about, grant requests. Because I noticed that we had this one that Director Todd talked about, which makes great sense. There are a lot of other ones that also make sense, but in talking to our representatives, and I noticed you mentioned, Mayor, that we're going to ask them to come back. All three of our representatives, both from the legislative and the Senate and from the county level, have all said, we're here to help you, but we cannot help you with money unless you come to us and make the request. We can't come to you and make the request. The city has to come to us. And so getting a council and moving ahead on that and getting that planning process together now with all of those ideas. I know we've got budgeting coming into effect and everything, but if that committee could come together and to have that plan fully outlined before the end of the year and before our legislators run off to their session, we could clearly be making our requests of the legislature, the Senate, and the county. I think we'd be in a better position to be asking for funding. I would really recommend a grant requests committee on behalf of the city of Mill Creek. I think that would be a really good recommendation, along with the ARPA allocation committee, to really help put us in a good perspective of where we want to go. Probably right at the same time as we're finishing up the budgeting, because then we would know what we need money for. But I wanted to make that recommendation again on committees. I think that's a smart move for us moving forward. Thank you.
Just briefly on the last, I think we'll be covering that in the months ahead as we work on the legislative agenda. I know it's something that Mayor Pro Tem is working on. The first, I didn't bring that back for discussion because I didn't hear any support for wanting to have an ARPA committee. We spent several meetings and a ton of staff time in the late spring and summer talking about and discussing how we want to use those funds. And so the idea of starting over with a committee from where we've gotten, I didn't hear that there was any support from other council members to move forward with a committee to look at that.
Do we have a plan for the ARPA funds right now?
That's still being worked on, and that's what we had several meetings in July narrowing
So
down the
that would be the use of this committee, is to finalize that allocation.
committee.
Let's get the committee together to finalize that allocation of funding.
The staff is working on that, is going to be bringing it back to the full council.
I think it'd be good to have some council representation on there as well.
Is there any desire to set up this committee? No, I don't have any.
I do.
Okay.
Maybe I'm the only one that wants to sit on the committee and be a part of that,
Committee of one isn't a committee. Okay.
along with the city employees. I don't want to be a committee of one.
Okay. Councilmember Allison, do you have any report tonight?
No report tonight.
Councilmember Duque.
I had the honor of being able to sit into the Parks and Recreation Board meeting last Wednesday. Councilmember Cavallari wasn't able to attend. And I just wanted to say, I really appreciate attending these committee meetings because they're just run really well. Everyone on that board is active and interested. And of course, Scott Harder is a fantastic a city representative in making sure to keep them updated about what's happening on council. I shared, the news about Sean, and we talked about police, where we were in hiring of police officers. And I know that they have various projects that they're hoping that we as a council and city staff will be able to fund and work on. But I also happen to know that city manager, Yamamoto, was there in attendance for the beginning part. And I just want to say that was great because when I was on the Parks Board, I didn't have the city manager ever, I think, attend any of the meetings I went. I wasn't there that long. There's others who were probably part of it. And I just really appreciated that and all the work that they are hoping to bring forward to us. But they're coming, so I won't say anything else. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us not to staff reports, but to audience communication. Go ahead, name it, yep, to the microphone, please, name and address, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes before I move online.
Okay, name's Mike Scott. I'm at 630 32nd Ave Southeast, Mill Creek, Washington. First comment is just, I actually on a mission for my wife to check out your setup for hybrid communications. And I know you guys can't handle this, but in discussion, there was discussion about talking to legislature. Only comment would be communicating about rules for hybrid meetings. My wife is president of PTA. It's very difficult to set up a hybrid meeting due to the rules that are part of it. If there could be a tier structure, if we communicate that back for the lower, lesser, the lower organizations that don't quite have the funding to set up this nice hybrid meeting, so we can encourage engagement. The second part, I'd be remiss in saying this. We talked about the opioid crisis, and we also talked about public safety. Tomorrow I fly to go to my 25th reunion for the class of 1997 at the United States Military Academy at West Point. One of my classmates will not be attending. He was on an operation in Honduras, fell out of a helicopter, was severely injured. And during his treatment, they overprescribed opioids to him, and he became addicted. Throughout his treatment, he was eventually put out of the Army, and he ended up, to his addiction, robbing a pharmacy to feed that addiction, and he ended up going to jail, and where he committed suicide in prison. He will not be at my reunion. We talked about opioid, and we talked about public safety. Public safety is not just about prosecuting people with crimes. It's about helping people like my classmate before they commit the crime with proper treatment and addiction help. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Nelson, your turn.
Yeah, Will Nelson, 14925 29th Drive, Southeast, Mill Creek. First of all, my thanks and appreciation to Mike Todd and the Public Works Department for the outstanding pavement repair job on Village Green Drive. Much better than the utilities' last attempt on that road. Second, I think it was a good idea for you guys, for the council to approve the public safety effort. I currently know of 2 women who will not go to the Thomas Lake Center and Fred Meyer at night because of the shenanigans that are going on up there, or potentially. So I think that was a very good idea. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Will. Anyone else? Okay, the council is going to recess to executive session to discuss the status of collective bargaining negotiations and discuss potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110 subsection 1I. We're probably going to need about 40 minutes. So can I first have a motion to extend the regular meeting to 9 o'clock?
I'll make a motion to extend the regular meeting until 8 p.m.
9 p.m.
9
It's
p.m.
already 8 p.m.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the regular meeting is extended till 9 and we will be in executive session until 8:50. Is that correct?
Yeah, and there will be no.
And no action will be taken at the end of the executive session. Thank you. We'll be recessed for 40 minutes.
Executive session has been extended to 9 o'clock.
Naomi?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, it is 9 o'clock straight up. The council has completed its executive session. And if without objection, we will adjourn the council meeting at 9 o'clock.
Very good. Thank you. Have a good night.
Let's get coffee next week.
Yes, I need to catch you up on something personal about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.